Okay. Politics, shunning, spills. We can see the workers aren't key. The impact means they can't turn. They just said there's no momentum now. He's won't pass NSA thumbs if the plan can't solve that. Even if it builds momentum because he's inevitably going to get under the president's inevitably going to get undermined by the Snowden case that tanks Cuban relations. You can see the Kane evidence indicates that Latin America more broadly sees immigration reform as a key issue. If the House fails to get it past that, makes relations rebuilding impossible. Obviously, outweighs the link is only one small sector of the economy rather than giant migration flows, which are obviously more important now. The shunning DA can see there's no link. They don't solve the term because they don't let the embargo utilitarianism means you just fight with the same now. The spills abandoned, there's no impact. They can see the argument that their evidence says that the East Coast is the one that's affected by the Cuban oil spill to go up to eastern seaboard places like Cape Cod, but their hotspots evidence says that the Caribbean is a hotspot, which means that they don't access their impact. Their hotspots evidence is terrible. It's not qualified. Their first card is from like 4G6something.com, and their second card is just an advertisement for some conservation firm trying to save the Caribbean. Their evidence also says that there's inevitable all causes, which they obviously cannot solve. Our Kennedy evidence should resolve the spade for you. It says that you should give them low risk of an impact because if you don't believe that there's a hotspot, our Kennedy evidence says Brazilian species ecosystems are able to fill in for each other. So any fish, etc., that dies will be filled in for. They'll also have a hard time explaining why biodiversity is critical disease because their evidence just says key things like plankton and fish, which are not the same as plants, which their evidence describes as critical disease fighting. Their evidence says U.S. expertise is critical. Their evidence from the 1AC says that the head of the commission that examined the oil spill said that Cuba's doing just fine now. Worse, that reduces the risk massively and means that other companies will fill in with just produce their expertise argument, which is one line from a card from a reporter. Now, the relationship ends. They do not solve this. There is no evidence that the plan spills over. The plan is one part of a list in their Benjamin Alvarado evidence, which is highlighted quite liberally. It includes things like alternative energy cooperation, long-term dismantling of the embargo through removal of trade restrictions and sanctions. Drilling is insufficient. It is too small and does not resolve the rest of the embargo, like sanctions, trade, and other goods. The Burton Patch evidence quote from the Burke card: the plan would not break new grounds or alter broader U.S. policy towards Cuba. Even if they solve Cuban relations, they don't just spill over. Their shifter card says, which is their link to terrorism as well, which is their link to terrorism, says that Brazil is more important. It says the whole embargo is key, but as long as we disagree with Brazil on things like a lot of things like Iranian proliferation, we'll probably never cooperate, and there's no terrorism impact. Their evidence is about Latin American terrorism, but their argument is that we retaliate against Russia and China, which is obviously inconsistent. They would not use it. They prefer conventional weapons, so Obama would not retaliate against official policy, which is Washington Post. That's the presumption. Their ACE evidence that's wrong. Now, the oil part of the advantage makes absolutely no sense, and you know it from reading this app all the time. Their evidence says that we should cooperate on things like alternative energy. It does not say that we'll fight China. Their Benjamin Alvarado evidence is very vague. He talks about energy security in the context of developing renewable energy and efficiency in Cuba, and then says things like, oh, China knocks are trying to get involved. They have no card that says that the plan will be able to lock up energy that says sufficient U.S. oil renaissance. Obviously, because we're going to surpass Saudi Arabia in terms of producing oil domestically. So we obviously warmed up. They can see the Dobbins evidence says no impact. China's not aggressive with the stocks. The pink tide DH turns this because it means that we don't get access to Cuban oil if they backlash against us. They say the shifter evidence that oil is key. It's highlighted in existence. They read this living card about nuclear terrorism is far too old. Our evidence says that Obama's policies have to retaliate. The Chapman evidence says that they can't actually use or assemble U.S. expertise for nuclear weapons. And even if they could, they don't want to use it because they would perceive a gigantic backlash as well as things like retaliation after Iraq and code-setting matters. China, they try to monopolize oil. I answered this about pink tide DA. The Brazil impact is dropped, which means it's trying in the direction of trident so proliferation leads to global war, draws in the U.S. which is the Rothschild evidence, kills regional stability, which is the Paul evidence means there's no relation, no cooperation on oil, so we can't hedge against China. Outweighs Russia impact, also outweighs the Boston risk. It's the only existential risk. We have to win a very small risk of the dissent to win the debate. Their Graham evidence from 07 is also helpful. It's very hopeful at best. Doesn't assume Latin American miscalculation, i.e. the Cuban Missile Crisis arguments is prime to be repeated if leftist movements Latin America draw upon Russian expertise. They say signal fails now, no threshold. There's no warrant for this. There's no reason why we're substantially relaxing the embargo now. The combo is key because the cash and lack of U.S. resolve means that made the third major commercial context of the Miller evidence new oil crash is critical to reviving the pink tide because of Maduro taking over Venezuela means it's uncertain about whether or not he'll go left. Drilling inevitable arguments is not only the Scarabeo raid can do it, but it withdrew earlier. The O'Grady evidence says drilling's not possible now. All companies have conclusively withdrawn. Also exploring versus drilling. The evidence is good that Russia will try to explore, but now that we successful U.S. expertise is critical. The plan is that the plan is keeping the United States solve relations with the EU and Great Britain. They don't solve relations with the Latin Americans as well. Our relations defense did not take out the DA, which is what Arsht tried to go for the 2A. We can't boost relations, but there would be outside perception, but people like Russia trying to be losing resolve and consistency as something we've been advocating for 30 years. Also, the money link means it's still unique, even if they win some unique circumstances. A small risk of this is all we need. This act is so terrible that any chance of the perception advantage should be sufficient, because I think you'll have a hard time assessing more than a very small impact. No nuclear terror shorts and free bird. Exaggerated for evidence, fuel or intended for most also correct about the unit to us to grow sex with focusing go off continue to hold every system function uranium is against the difficult to manufacture products when this complex materials such as chemical technology is required for your appreciation of the commercial insult to massive overall solution to go to fabric nuclear weapons.
Congratulations, those speak well. You almost so caught up with that no nuclear terrorism card at the end. You almost so emotionally invested. You didn't help the class. That was a beautiful no nuclear terrorism card. Andrew spent all this time in the 2NC making smart arguments against their case and putting our cards with it. Like we talked about. He's going to take it on their cards and using them, plugging them in as he attacks their app cards, etc. How in the 2NR does he efficiently refer back to all that work? Well, he uses a lot of the same language. Let me ask you this, even without looking at your flows, do you remember when he read off the ridiculous URL on the spills advantage in the 2NC? Yes. Absolutely. Did you know when he was talking about it when he mentioned it again? Do you remember when he quoted their card as an advertisement for whatever company cares about Caribbean hotspots? Yeah? So when he said advertisement in the 2NR, did you know what he was talking about? I'm actually not even sure he used the word advertising in the 2NR, but because he referred to it so clearly that I knew what he was talking about, I wrote down advertisement as shorthand. He's in the 2NR using this kind of shorthand, the long URL, whatever it was, which only makes it sound more ridiculous. And if he's kind of calling back, it's like in humor when you make callbacks to previous things. He's using the same language and it clicks in everybody's mind because he uses the same words and phrases, and because those arguments were so clear in the 2NC to begin with. I think that's a big part of it. We understand the points made in the 2NC, and it's so easy for him to refer back to them later. When he does his impact calculus on pink tide, he does two things that I think are very nice. The first is he retraces the debate and tells us how to judge the debate. He says, he kind of realistically assesses what shape his dissent is in versus what shape their case is in, and says, even if they beat a bunch of our dissent, their case is going to be so small we're going to win, because it doesn't make any sense and we have so many smart answers to it. That's talking to us in the language of a judge. What has happened over the course of the debate? What state are the arguments in? And even if the dissent is only a small risk, it's bigger than the case. And the second thing he does is his impact analysis is based on cards. The Brazil impact, like you all highlighted before the speech, we have cards for what is going to happen with Brazil. The dissent is a larger magnitude. That comes from Bostrom, a card that says it's the only existential risk. Analytic impact calculus, useful. Analytic impact calculus backed up with cards from the neg block. Excellent. He talks to us. He says, you all know how dumb this advantage is. This is like rhetorical flair. He says, you need to read this, etc. He's speaking to the judge. You know the case is ruined. We don't need much dissent to outwin. He's talking to the judge, the audience, like human beings. He doesn't use a lot of rhetorical flair because the 2NR and he has things to get done. But he is instructing the judges how to evaluate the arguments in the debate. And he can do that because when he says you, it means us. You all don't spend enough time talking to the judge, the only person who matters in terms of who wins the debate. Why does Markoff use the phrase try or die at one point? What point did he make there? Sorry, what did he say about try or die?
Well, actually he said try or die for that, but he said the Brazil impact when conceded, so he took the try or die.
Okay, he says the Brazil impact when conceded, which kind of reverses the try or die logic. I have to think a little bit about whether that makes sense, but it certainly sounds good. And what is he doing there? Why does he use that phrase? Yeah, but even more important than YR, it refers to a very common what? 2AR. I think Markoff, based on all of his neg debating, has heard a lot of 2ARs, where it's sort of like, oh, the neg has a big dissad, but everything's inevitable. Drilling's inevitable, which makes biodiversity loss inevitable, and nuclear terrorism inevitable, and that causes war with Russia, because we retaliate, and that makes this inevitable. And whoa, Brazil would probably pro-lift too, because everything's blowing up. He's worried about 2ARs that say, we're all going to die, so we might as well do something to try and fix it. Now, Markoff doesn't lose to that 2AR very often, but when he does lose neg debates, that's the 2AR that worries him. So he preempts that, knowing that he doesn't need to speak last. He says, if I was Andrew Arsht, or if I was your 2A that I debate all the time, what do I want to be talking about? And it's almost always why the status quo is hopelessly in trouble. Whatever word I was about to use there, I can't use. It's hopelessly something. It's hopelessly in trouble. And he beats that 2AR ahead of time by using the kind of language 2As like to use and flipping it back over to his arguments.
Immigration, spills, co-op. Markoff is so excited to get to the Brazil pro-lib impact that he kicks the dissad correctly, but he messes up a critical concession at the top of the 1AR, so I'm going to highlight it again. The thesis of CIR turns Latin American relations in the card is that Chavez's death opens up a new window for massive cooperation, which proves that the app can solve because there's such a low threshold. But our argument in the 1AR was that passage is going to happen. The uniqueness overwhelms the link argument, so cooperation is going to get better. Cuba is the rub. They read us an internal link card, but here's the kicker. It also answers the internal link to Pink Tide because it can't simultaneously be possible that Chavez's death in the context of immigration policy is the make it or break it for the cash that all Latin American countries need to determine all of their A, nuclear, and B, funding decisions. Are you kidding me? Spills. The only question in your mind at the end of the debate is if a terrorist attack did take place, how fast would hair trigger alerts be ratcheted up, and how fast would that result in the international exchange of nuclear weapons? They have conceded a Russia scenario, a China scenario. The gut check that Latin America is outside of the US is obviously something our authors take into account because they can read a map, but the argument is that smuggling is critical. The weapon gets into the US, it gets detonated in New York, and then all of the nuclear bets are off and mutually assured destruction no longer exists, which means it bypasses the critical defense to their Russia impact, but it internally turns the Bostrom evidence because that is the country cited by Asen in his new report. Now, the reason that that's important is that they read Bostrom, which says that the only nuclear war that would be existential is that Russian nuclear war, which would be the result of accidents, miscalculation, hair triggers, whatever you want to call it. The important point is that the arms race that would be triggered by Brazil acquiring a nuclear weapon cannot possibly match the impact they read because the tag in the 1NR was, or the 2NC was that this is the biggest impact in debate, so he did our impact calculus for us. Now, the Russia impact cannot possibly occur in the context of Pink Tide because of mutually assured destruction. We have 60 years of empirics on our side, which means that the fact that the Graham evidence is from 2007 should not overwhelm the fact that it's from an expert, and that the mutually assured destruction it speaks to has always been resilient in the context of Cuba, because guess what? That was where the only previous missile crisis occurred. Now, the internal link to the dissent. The negative has made a big mistake. In cross-sex of the 2 and C, he concedes that there is a signal link and a cache link. But all of the
evidence that's read in the debate, as per Relations and Cash agrees that Signal is a much, much bigger deal because Cuba cannot possibly have as much cash as Chavez did when he was alive, and he was supporting this stuff even more than Castro would. Cuba's total budget annually is $120 billion. We all agree that the leadership is corrupt, so it seems reasonable that they would keep some of it to themselves and hoard it instead of pumping it all into movements, which need to be built up from scratch in the first place because they're not achieving anything as per anti-Americanism, the status quo. On top of that, the U.S. pumps billions into every Latin American country every year, and if we wanted to, we could massively increase it, which is the thesis of the undercover counterfunding argument. Ask yourself, is every government going to make the biggest decision in their young histories, ditching the United States of America in all foreign policy aspects and proliferating against our will for a one-time payment from Castro because they can't afford their new Ferrari? How do they know, get this, that the embargo won't be reinstated once the U.S. gets upset with that? Fiat's durable. They don't know that. They won't take a chance. Now, I'll directly address Brazil Pro-Lip because that's obviously going to be the foremost question in your minds because you're flow-oriented folks. Markoff is really good in the 2NC on that Brazil relations are really messed up now. But Brazil is a huge country with a ton of cash, both geographically and financially, massively bigger than Cuba. Castro's bribes can't make the difference over whether Brazil can build a bomb or not, because his money can't even buy one bomb. Look at Iran. They are bigger than Cuba. They have a bigger economy than Cuba. There are sanctions on them, and they can't even get the job done. Brazil proliferating, and I'm cross-applying impact defense here, so it's not new, is the same jive as the Saudi impact defense that they conceded to kick the diss at. They can't get the materials because it would shatter relations with every country in the area and start an arms race. They know that, which means that the reasons why Saudi Arabia and Iran are self-interested and restraining are also reasons why Brazil, who I would argue is generally a more reasonable country, would not do it either. Last argument I'm going for, which is uniqueness is a menace. All right? But Chavez was pumping a ton of money into the same time. Maduro, regardless of which way he swings, which is Markoff's uniqueness distinction in the 2NR, cannot be worse than Chavez because he cannot possibly have more money than Chavez already did because he was selling all of the oil he could at that time on global prices. Which means it can't be worse, and there are no nukes now.
Three quick thoughts before we all head to lunch about Arsht 2AR. I think Arsht is a great example of three big 2AR skills. The first is he tells a story to the judge. There's a lot of rhetoric. There are some statistics on Cuban money. He's heavy on explanation. He has time in the 2AR to explain his arguments fully to the judge. But that story focuses on the nexus questions of the debate. He knows he needs to win a big impact, and he needs to match that with defense against their dissent. And although it seems like he's kind of leisurely telling you a story, he's really not. He isn't wasting any time, because everything that comes out of his mouth, although it sounds like Grandpa on the front porch, is a new warrant for the critical arguments he needs to win to outweigh the dissent. He tells a story that focuses on the key issues in the debate. The second thing he does is he retraces the debate. Markoff did some of this in the 2NR, like I mentioned, but Arsht has so much more time for it in the 2AR. He says, there are two links to the dissent originally. There's the money link, and there's the signal link. And then he describes all the cards that have been read and explains why signal is more important. On the Boxer impact, he says, this was their tag in the negative block. And this is how they're extending it in the 2NR. And this is how we're using it in the 1AR and 2AR. When he wants to say something that he's not sure was in the debate already, he says, this isn't you, and he explains what arguments have led to it. He's retracing the debate and speaking to the judge. The judge says, what have I been listening to for the last hour and a half? And Arsht says, this is what you've been listening to, and that's why the act wins. That's what the Traer does. And third and finally, like his 2AC, Arsht is thinking across flows. Arguments on the politics flow substantiate arguments he's going to make later on the dissent defense. Arguments on the Saudi flow from the 2AC, he retraces the debate, and that same logic helps him with arguments later on. He's retracing the debate across the speeches, and at any given time, he's thinking across the flows and using logic over here, where it's needed over here, using cards from here, where it needs it over there, and putting together a story that addresses the nexus questions of the debate in the out scale. So let me hand things back to John Duvall for one final thank you to the debaters, and we'll all head forward.
Yeah, I don't really have much, but thanks to the debaters, Anastasia. We're not going to hold a vote or anything because really the winners in this debate are just the audience. But I would encourage you to save your flows, and you may want to have some talks with your lab leaders about the debate, or feel free to find any of them, myself, Seth, Mr. Batterman, and Maggie, and you can talk it up with them and really watch the debate. But thanks again, and electives at 1:30.